Men of the Road. The men on the road were 1 and 10, 11, and a boy no older than 12. Alep had his thoughts and feelings about what to do with the boy, but the idea was to hit them by surprise. Only a few of them were armed, and to run them down with their horses, jump down from their horses, and begin the killing. It would be easy enough, surely, Hester thought to himself, and if the boy died, then that was his fate. They would kill or wound 2 or 3 of them with their horses, and from there would be 8. Some would run, maybe half of them, if they were cowards. Most men were, and the others, feeling some sense of loyalty to one another, would stand to fight, and they would die. Hester had once cleared a field of 20 men, each equipped with armor and sword, and of more prowess than the whole of these men. It would be an easy fight, if you could call it a fight at all. Something interesting about Hester. He was not a large man, though he was muscled and strong. He was perhaps 2 to 3 inches shorter than most men of these lands, at least, and some men, quite a few, didn't think much of him until, of course, it was too late. That was part of his advantage, hiding in his disadvantage. Some men, the smarter men, recognized him for what he was, and took greater caution in fighting him, or they simply did not fight him at all. Alep, who was a large man, perhaps 2 or 3 inches taller than the average man, oftentimes relied too much, as Hester put it, on his size, of which he had but a small advantage. Alep did try to listen, but with his angry, emotional ways, he never was quite able to learn fully, and so, oftentimes when he fought larger men, his fight was harder fought, and much more difficult. Though obviously, because he was still alive, he won the fights. Hester did not criticize him much, only sometimes, for he worried after his brother, who he knew would come to a timely death if he did not learn better form and speed, as he was not so large as to overcome every man on size alone, something that Hester had always known and incorporated into his fighting style, which was quite deadly to any man, large or small, skilled or unskilled. And Hester had little sense of honor. It did not bother him to kill these men on the road, because he knew that it would serve a purpose, and he would get what he wanted, which in this case, coincidentally, was honorable to rescue his sister. Though had it been to require wealth instead, he would not have hesitated to do so. Many men and women yet called him brave, as few batted an eye at a few peasants dying, especially regular working men, except for other peasants, of course, sometimes. I wonder, Hester spoke quietly to himself, what purpose enough did these men find in their work that they should not just lie down and die? It would be a mercy killing, then. Hester and Alep charged the group of men, who yelled it out in surprise as they saw them coming, swords wielded. Hester only carrying one sword in his right hand, his other gripping the horse tightly. As he planned, yet against it, he ran down 5 men, not 3 or 4, not 2 or 3, but 5, with his horse, chasing after some as they ran away towards the forest. Alep killed maybe 3, leaving 2, and the boy and a few more wounded. Jumping off of his horse, Hester made his way towards the men running. They ran in a pair, which wasn't smart of them. Sprinting after them, sword wielded, he would not need the second sword. Of course, he attacked the men to his left first, as that was the easiest swing. He sliced the man's back open, he put him on the ground, then placed his sword in his left hand, grabbing hold of the second man with his right, and throwing him down onto the ground. He slaughtered him mercilessly, and then quickly ran back to the other man, stabbed him through the heart as he lay face down on the ground and was bleeding out. Alep killed the rest, those who were still alive, and as he did, Hester noticed that the boy, who had yet escaped them, was running towards the castle, towards the fortress, presumably to give word to the lord of their attack. Hester pursed his lips and looked over to Alep, then nodding over towards the boy. "Don't kill him," he said. Alep jumped onto his horse, and shortly after, Hester did the same. By the time that he had done so, Alep had grabbed hold of the boy and was fighting with him. The boy struggled hard, something that Hester took note of. As Hester approached, the boy stopped the fighting and looked up to him from the ground. He yelled loudly. A short moment passed, and the boy screamed out again. "They can't hear you," Hester said in his usual tone. The boy yelled anyway. "I like his spirit," Hester said to Alep. "We shall keep him." "Keep him where?" Alep asked. "We shall keep him with us, of course," Hester grinned. "Tie him to a tree in the woods a ways." "You mean we will," Alep attempted to correct him. Hester nodded at him. "Of course, that is what I meant." By the time they had found a suitable tree, with a rope they had acquired from one of the carts, fortunately one of the men had come prepared, a thought that made Hester smile, and so they used it to tie the boy to a large enough oak tree in the wilderness. The boy continued to yell. He would not give up. "He is loud yet strong," Hester said to Alep as they began to leave him. "Even now he does not fear us leaving him to die." "But we are not leaving him to die," said Alep. He does not speak our language, said Hester, nodding to the boy. He does not know what we plan to do with him. Then he is quite strong after all. Indeed, Hester agreed. To the fortress, then? Alep asked, smiling now as well. Yes, said Hester, to the fortress. They headed back towards the road, having left the horses by the boy and leaving the carts there on the road, all of them but one. Their party size was not great, so they could not take all of the carts. Hopefully one would be enough, and Hester thought that he had seen one such person on the day past present such a cart as the one they carried on their lonesome. He wondered then if it might not be suitable that he and his brother carry one together. Surely, he thought, that would be inconspicuous enough. Surely enough, as they approached the fortress walls, the doors opened without word, and they entered inconspicuously. The men inside did treat them as if they were his scum, but nonetheless they marched forward, cart in hand, setting it down upon request in the center of the square inside there. In fact, not only did they treat them poorly, they spat, they kicked, and they laughed as if they were peasants, which, though beneath their present clothing they wore their armor, and it was a lean armor, they were yet treated as if they were nothing. Hester did not enjoy it. Neither did Alep, who stood snarling. Hester only sighed. Brother, he said. These men, Alep began to say before Hester silenced him. These men are lesser men, Hester grinned. Of course they're going to act like animals. Alep quieted himself at that, as he knew what Hester thought of his constant griping about this or that issue. Alep wondered also for but a moment, was he like these men? Would he have treated these peasants better? He wondered what his brother would do, but knew better of such thoughts. Hester never thought that way about what could be, at least not in any way that was not meaningful and based in reality. Hester, he knew, could never be a peasant. Even if he had been born as one, he would have climbed his way upwards easily enough, training or no, as his ability was uncanny. So unless the value of the other men of the lands were somehow became greater, and it would not, Hester would always be himself, a great warrior, a great man. To some. Alep simply nodded to his brother, who nodded back with his usual grin. Come, said Hester slyly. Let us make our way. Hester began to speak to the men, nodding and then bowing for them, pretending, of course. Good sirs, he said. Please accept these gifts, our lord, in the tower there. Hester pointed upwards without pointing towards anything in particular, as he knew that the lord was in one of the turrets, most likely, though he was not sure which, has told us that you should feast here. Now. The men looked at him and laughed. When did you talk to him? One of the larger men asked. He was a bearded man, tall and dark, dirty from not bathing. The hordemen rarely bathed, unlike those beneath the Queen and their owl god and the Fifth Army. Hester only grinned at him. We did not. The big man said, laughing gutturally. Then how do you know that he wants us to feast? Hester shrugged and answered somewhat quietly. Don't you want to? The big man pointed at him and smiled. I like you. Get the Lord. The other men went along with what he said momentarily, but then something happened. Hester grinned over at his brother, turning his head, but as he did, the big man ran at him. Quickly, Hester sidestepped him and threw him off balance, knocking him onto his hands and knees lightly, covering him in snow and mud. What the hell, the big man said, as he was accustomed to abusing peasants. Yet, so was Hester.